Stay tuned to meet a woman who survived a tragedy that most people die from. My name is Jason Bradley, and you're watching Urban Report. Hello and welcome to Urban Report. My guest today is Esther Smith, a woman with a powerful testimony. Welcome to Urban Report, Esther.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. So, we want to jump into your testimony, but we don't want to jump in too soon to the meat of it. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Where are you from?
I was born in Louisiana.
Okay.
And raised there as well. My father is a pastor, and my mom is an author now and a stay-at-home mother. I'm one of 3 siblings. I'm the youngest.
Okay.
Yes, it was pretty normal family, and just the 4 of us living in Louisiana.
Okay. Now, were you raised Adventist?
I was. My father is an Adventist pastor and has been all of my life. And I was raised with all of the principles that we are accustomed to, and alongside the customary, do good to everyone else and golden rule type of things.
Okay, so they really instilled the Christian values in your life.
Definitely.
Now, you didn't always live in Louisiana. When didn't you move from Louisiana or something?
Yes, when my brother and I got older, we went to college out of state.
Okay.
And so, but my parents still live in Louisiana, yes.
Okay, what college did you attend?
I actually attended Oakwood University.
Okay.
In Alabama.
Yeah, okay. I went to Oakwood.
Yeah, it's almost like a family tradition. My grandparents went there, my parents went there, and now my brother and I went there. I went there for my undergrad.
Okay. Now, what was it like growing up as the baby in the family?
Oh, people say that growing up as a baby in the family, you get away with everything. Mm-hmm. That is not true at all. I was definitely, guided and protected more so than my brother was, I think. Even though he kind of had free range in a way. Mm-hmm. When I was growing up, my father kind of was like, well, you know what, you're kind of more gentle and delicate. Let's kind of guard you from the evils of the world. But so growing up as a baby in the family was fun, but definitely interesting.
Okay. I too am the baby in the family, so
cool.
I can relate.
Awesome.
So tell us a little bit more about your journey. What took place? There was something in your life that took place. An accident, if you will. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, well, it was my junior year of college, and prior to, because we had family staying in Alabama, it was my junior year, and before that, every break we kind of stayed in Alabama. My parents would drive up for the holidays, and we'll spend that time there. But this particular Christmas, we decided, my brother and I, to drive home. And so we did that. It's about a 7-hour drive, and that's fine. So we packed up all of our things and got in my little car and drove home. And on the way home was when I discovered that my brother had purchased a gun.
Really?
And oh yeah, it was.
Why do you think? Did he feel that he needed a gun, or what? Was he trying to be cool? What do you think it was?
Well, I asked him because, given the way that we were brought up and our parents raised us, it was extremely out of character to do such a thing. And so I asked him, why do you have this? Why do you need it? Or, what are you doing with it? And he told me, well, you haven't been watching the things in the news lately. And he went on to talk about, just the things that are happening politically, I guess, with police and African American males and the situations that have constantly seemed to appear in the media. And he went on to talk about how scared he was about that happening to him too. And me being, I guess, more in the line of my parents' thinking, I would be like, well, God protects us. Why would you need a gun? Why would you need a weapon? And it's almost the biggest handgun that you could actually get. It's a 45 caliber pistol.
Wow.
And these types of guns are used to kill deer and, you know, animals. You know, it's a huge bullet, and a really kind of heavy weapon.
Yes.
And you know, it's a bit of an argument that went on in the car, talking about why he would need that and why it was in my car specifically.
Yeah, and it seems like if there's a fear of what's going on with the police, it doesn't seem like having a gun or owning a gun would help the situation with the police.
Yeah, definitely not. I tried to convey that to my brother, and you know, just saying, okay, I understand where you're coming from with that fear. You know, that's a very real fear for African Americans now. I understand where you're coming from with that, but on the same hand, if you have a weapon, they're more inclined to be more proactive as opposed to saying, okay, well, we're going to ask you a few questions as to why you have that.
Yes.
So I told him, either way, your logic is completely flawed. So.
And how did he take that?
Well, as I said, it was an argument. And so it's kind of lighthearted talking about it now, but in the moment, it was a very real conflict happening in my car, and I couldn't understand why he would purchase it, why he would actually go out and buy one. And he was saying, you know, I have the proper training, I went through the classes and everything, I have a license, I've done everything legally, this gun is legally in my possession, and guns don't kill people, people do. And I have a problem with that statement too, but that was his logic behind it. And we continued the ride home and, you know, put the gun back in the glove compartment. But that was a challenging moment for me between my brother and I.
Yeah, I can only imagine, because it sounds to me like he felt very strongly about owning a firearm. So what happened? What transpired in that car?
Well, when we got home, I immediately went to tell my parents, like, he has a gun, like, this is terrible, take it away from him. And my parents have always taught my brother and I to use our own minds, to use the logic that God gave us and come up with logical conclusions to situations in life. And so my parents didn't immediately repossess the gun from him. They wanted to see why he thought that he needed one. What's the real purpose behind this kind of thinking? And where did it originate? And so it was that Thursday that we drove home. Friday, we had more discussions as to why he had it. Again, getting pretty heated. And then Saturday, we went to church. My father preached. And on the way to church, I discovered that the gun was still in my car. And so I talked to him about that, and he decided that he wanted to show our godbrother that he had gotten the gun. And so after church, on our way home, he decided to do that. And my godbrother was sitting in the car, in the seat. Well, my brother was sitting in the seat behind me, my godbrother sitting opposite him, and my godsister sitting in the passenger side. And I'm driving home. And so my godsister and I, we convinced them that, hey, having the gun out in the car with all of us driving is not smart at all.
Absolutely.
Okay? So we need to put that gun up, put it on safety, and put it away. And so they understood that that was probably the smarter thing to do. And my brother moved to put the gun away and disable it and disassemble it. And he managed to get the bullet clip out of the gun, but he didn't remember that there was a bullet in the firing chamber of the weapon. And you know, a lot of guns these days are built with a hairline trigger.
Yeah.
I learned later that that actually means that it only needs very little pressure to go off. And the gun did go off. His finger kind of brushed the trigger, and it went off directly into the center of the driver's seat, where I was
you
sitting.
were. Wow. Okay. So you're driving a car. You just got out of church,
Yeah.
right? You're driving the car. You're headed. Where were you headed? Back home?
Back home.
Back home from
Yeah.
church, and your brother pulls out the gun to show your god brother. And he goes. Then you talk him out of it like it's, you know, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
He goes to take the clip out and everything. Forgets that there's one in the chamber. Goes to put it up and accidentally shoots you.
Yeah, he shot me, and it is unlike any other feeling I have felt before.
Yeah. What is it? What did it feel like?
Well, initially, it feels like someone has just hit you very, very hard. And the only thing that I have ever likened it to was being hit by a steel bat. It's the only thing that I could actually think of that could have such a velocity to hit you with. And the breath is like knocked from you, and it's very, it's almost very weird to describe, because it's not a normal feeling. It's not a natural feeling.
Yeah.
And I remember knowing instantly that I was shot. Knowing instantly. Just because my car is very small, and it was and the windows were up, and so when the gun went off, the sound in the car was massive.
Yeah.
And it was deafening, and knowing instantly that I had sustained a bullet.
Man. And so did you wreck the car? Like what happened? I mean, you got shot, so
Yeah.
it seems like it would, it's a possibility that you could have wrecked the car. What happened? Did you pull over? Like what, I mean?
Well, my first thought was, oh God, I'm driving. I don't know how I'm gonna stop this car. And so what I knew initially I had to do was either try to stop the car. I'm going about 60, 65 miles an hour. And I know that I have to bring this car to a stop. And so I try to bring the car, I try to put my foot on the pedal, but I realize that I'm going in between the gas and the brake, and I can't function properly to bring my foot down onto the brake pedal and to literally save my life. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so I go to, and I'm thinking, okay, so I can't seem to put my foot on the pedal. My next option is to stop touching the accelerator at all, and hopefully it'll slow down by itself. And it did that. Thank God it slowed down, and we were able to kind of coast to the side of the road. And while I'm having these thoughts to myself, like, okay, I have to stop the car, I have to try to not kill everyone else.
Yeah.
My brother, there's chaos in the car. Everyone is screaming. My god sister is in tears. She can't compose herself. And everyone is screaming, oh my God, what happened? What happened? Because I had screamed, you shot me, you shot me. And so everybody's trying to verify that information.
Wow.
And so I'm bringing the car down, and my brother is trying to figure out what happens. He actually bends me over to see whether or not he had actually shot me. And so he does, and he sees that my clothes are torn, and there's, you know, this bullet-sized hole in the back of my clothes. And because I got shot on in my back about 2.5 inches from my spine.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And so he leans me over, and he sees that, you know, I was shot, in fact. And so he jumps over me to stop the car. So he's sitting in my lap.
Yeah.
And he's stopping the car. He brings the car to a stop, and everybody piles out of the car, and they're panicking. And in our little town, in our little country road, there weren't cars on the road, and so my brother is sitting in the road, and he is rocking back and forth with his head in his hands, and he's screaming, "What have I done? What have I done? Oh my God!" And everybody's not sure what to do exactly. And I remember at this time just feeling kind of sleepy. I instantly felt sleepy after the car was stopped. And I remember knowing that we have to get to the hospital. We have to get to the hospital. That's what needs to happen right now. And so a little deliberation goes on, and then everybody kind of figure out a way to make that happen, including moving me to the back seat of the car.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they drove you to the hospital? They didn't call 911, no ambulance or anything like that?
Well, they did call 911
Okay.
on the way, but our little town has one hospital, and the ambulance at that time was somewhere else, and they were too far to get to us. And so they said, you know what, you guys are just going to have to drive here. And so that's what we ended up doing. But on the back seat of that car, in the back seat, once my brother had moved me and we were making the desperate drive to the hospital, I had one of the clearest moments with God that I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And
tell us about that.
Yeah, a lot of the things that we experience in life is kind of TV influenced, I believe.
Yes.
And so here I was in the back seat of the car, just knowing that I'm going to choke to death and drown in my own blood. And all my life, there have been two things that I feared the most. One was getting shot, and the other one was drowning. And I faced both of those things in one day. And so I'm laying in the back seat of the car, and I just know that I'm gonna choke to death. I just know it. And because I'm not sure what was hit, I'm not sure what was damaged. And so I'm praying on the back seat of the car, Lord, I know you didn't bring me here to 3 days home. It's the third day home. I know you didn't bring me to die in the back seat of my own car. And desperately praying, and I'm trying to, nothing could come to my mind, and I'm trying to remember the Lord's Prayer, and it doesn't come fully. I remember, I think, the first couple of lines of it, and I'm praying, and I hear the clearest voice and the most calm voice. In my head, I'm going kind of crazy with all of the different thoughts of what can happen, and did this actually happen to me? And the voice, I remember like it was yesterday what it said. It said, this isn't for you. This is for him. You are going to be okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now we have some pictures, that's powerful. We have some pictures of when you went to the hospital. We want to put those up now, and just tell us what's going on in those pictures. Well,
in this first picture here, I think this was right after my surgery when we got into the hospital. My mom took those pictures, and here you can see I'm hooked up with every kind of tube you can imagine, and under those blankets I have tubes all over my body. Here the doctor is actually removing those tubes, which is kind of more terrifying than having it put in, because you can actually feel those tubes being removed. Here I was actually learning to walk again. I had to, you can see it there in the picture, there is a walker that I was being taught to use again with the physical therapist there in the hospital.
Now, that's you getting out?
Yeah, this is me going home finally on Christmas Eve.
Wow, you got out on Christmas Eve? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, how did this event affect your family? How did this, and how did it impact your brother? Because you were in the back seat and you heard the voice and it said, this is not for you, this is for him. How did that impact your brother and your family? I know your parents had to have been devastated.
Well, yes, it was the most, I'm sure it's the worst thing that a parent can imagine. You know, once we got to the hospital, there were 2 surgeries that I had to go through, and a list of injuries that included a collapsed lung and a punctured liver and bruised ribs and, you know, all sorts of things. And I woke up from surgery on Wednesday, actually 4 days later. And so my parents and my family were heartbroken, you know, and my brother wouldn't leave the hospital. You know, you have visiting hours, and he said, I'm not going until she's okay, until she's all right. But in the long run, I think it strengthened our family, because it's literally the worst thing that a family could even conceive happening. A brother shooting a sister and being raised the way that we were raised.
Absolutely.
And having the sort of foundation that my parents gave us. It's not something that you would ever think would happen, but and it was the hardest thing. It was the hardest thing going through and living through, and even to this day my brother has a hard time talking about it. But I think on the long run, getting through it and moving past it and watching us all grow and kind of cling to each other after that, it definitely helped to build stronger bonds, and in a way that only God can create. We're better for it.
Yeah, so that's how you guys are coping today, like you're stronger. And you know, they say tragedy brings people together, typically. It brings people closer, but that is extremely tough, and I can only imagine how frightened you must have been, but how comforting that voice must have been when you were in the back seat of the car. What is it that you really want people to take away from your testimony?
Well, as I said, there are 2 things in my life that I was absolutely afraid of happening. Being shot and drowning. And in one day, I had to face both of those things happening to me. And, you know, there's a text in the Bible that talks about the weapons that come against that, the weapons that are formed will not prosper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for some reason it's not coming right now.
That's also in a song too that I've heard. No weapons formed against me
you will prosper. But God doesn't say that the weapon won't be fired, in my case. And so what I would want someone to take away from my testimony, from my family's testimony, ultimately would be that God keeps His promises.
Yes.
And no matter what we face, no matter what we go through, even the worst thing that you can imagine happening to you, God is still there, just like He was there seconds before that happened to you. And so, you know, when God promises us something, we can grab hold onto that and cling to it for dear life. And I think that that is a powerful thing that we face, especially, you know, in a time where you're afraid for your life, or even the smallest thing. Maybe you're having a bad day, but God says that He will always be there with us, by our sides, holding us through it and keeping us together. And so that's what I would want someone to take away from my testimony. God is absolutely real, and He absolutely cares about you, and He keeps all of the promises that He gives to us.
Yes, that's beautiful. Now, there were no legal ramifications or anything for your brother or anything? I mean, it was an accident, you know, but there was no type of legal issues or anything?
You would think so, but no. They asked about whether it had been preconceived in a way, or he hadn't done it, you know, if he had done it on purpose, in which case I would need to file lots of paperwork with the police department. But no, once we established that it was in fact an accident and he did not mean to do that at all, there was no legal ramifications that my brother succumbed to, other than having his gun taken away and filing a police report with the police department in our town. No, it was pretty quickly done on that side, where we said, oh, well, no, it's an accident. It definitely was not meant to happen.
Yes.
And so, no, not on that end. It wasn't too complicated on that end.
Okay, okay. And so what's his take on owning a gun now? Because those fears with the police, his reasoning, those fears still exist.
Yeah.
So what is his take now on owning a firearm?
That's a good question. Well, it's an interesting thing because his reason for actually getting a gun is only getting worse. You know, there are things that are happening all over the nation now. But now he wouldn't get a gun. No, I think now he realizes God's capability in a way to protect us in a way, because he had a front row seat to God's protection. And so my brother, even though he had a real reason for wanting to get one, flawed though it may be, I think the way that he looks at the situation today is to just try to keep yourself in line and not get in those situations where it might lead to one of the more typical incidents that happen in America now. I think he's just trying to be even and level across the whole board with it, and not use weapons of any kind.
Yes, well, I can't imagine what it would feel like. One of my brothers actually was shot too. He got shot 4 times, and it just missed his spine as well. So I can relate in that sense, but I can't even imagine what it must have felt like, what it must have been like being that close to death, feeling like you might potentially die.
It's utterly terrifying. It's terrifying. You know, when you have that kind of moment on television, if you're watching a show and someone is close to death, you know, it's a television show, but you also think, oh, I wonder what that person is feeling.
Yes.
I think depending on the situation, but definitely with my situation, it's absolutely terrifying because, you know, it's so sudden. You don't think that it would happen, but we can depend on God always.
And it's definitely strengthened your relationship with the Lord, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, man, you have a powerful testimony.
Yeah.
I hate that you had to go through that and experience that, but I'm glad that as a result of it, it strengthened your relationship, and you've grown tremendously, and your brother has grown as well, and it brought your family closer together. Yeah. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching. Well, we've reached the end of another program. Join us next time, and remember, it just wouldn't be the same without you.